What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we have Devhonte Johnson. He is a black belt under Murilo Santana under Unity Jiu-Jitsu. He's an accomplished competitor. He's won a lot of stuff, starting all the way back to when he was a blue belt and purple belt, and he's won a lot of competitions along the way. I've met him a few times out in the circuit. Super nice guy, and so I wanted to have him on the show and talk to him and sort of see how he got started in jiu-jitsu and see how he got going with everything. And he's got an interesting story because at least it was something that I kind of related to is as a guy grew up, single parent, poor, and, was able to get into jiu-jitsu and allowed his work ethic and his consistency to show other people that he was serious and they were able to help him out along the way, which is something we kind of get into and something that I relate to a lot. So I think, again, I enjoyed his story and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Big thanks to our sponsors. First one is Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is the CBD of, my choice, CBD of Eugene's choice. I actually just got the sleep gummies in. These are for Jess. Jess loves the raspberry sleep gummies. They have, obviously CBD in them as well, but they also have melatonin, and she loves these things. She says that whenever she uses them, she just seems to sleep a little bit more like a rock than when she's not using them. And so again, I'm really impressed by their products. And so I tell people, and this is my challenge to you, if you've never tried CBD before, just try it for a month and see what happens. The first time that I ever used CBD was back in 2017, excuse me. I was using it. I was on a trip in Costa Rica. One of the guys rubbed a CBD balm of another company, rubbed it on my shoulder, or my knee, excuse me, that was bothering me that day. The next day I come into the mat room and I remember feeling no pain, and I didn't really put two and two together until later on. I was like, oh, maybe that balm helped. Well, a couple months later, I was back home and my shoulder was bugging me. I remember I was having just a hell of a time with this muscle in my middle of my shoulder blades that kept flaring up. It would literally have me hunched over. I didn't have the ability to stand up straight. And so one of the guys had a balm, rubbed the balm on my back. All of a sudden, a couple hours later, I'm like, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. That's amazing, right? And so then I was thinking, well, maybe there's something to this stuff. Because I used to hear all the claims that what it does, and I just thought it was snake oil. I thought it was someone trying to sell me another stupid supplement. Have you ever had one of those people that's trying to sell you the MLM stuff, hey, we've got this really cool thing. I got one time, one of my buddies tried to get me in this thing that was like selling like acai juice. I'm like, bro, come on. Anyway, it's not even around anymore. But anyway,
I wonder why not.
Yeah, it's like it was acai juice. I can just go get an acai bowl or something. I'll be fine. But then I started using the tinctures, and I noticed a really cool effect on my body. Everything from the way that I felt like with my sleep to the soreness in my body after like hard exercise and everything else. And so it was really useful. And then I tried different brands, and Charlotte's Web was the one that I landed on, and it's the one that seems to give me the best consistent results. And it's the one that I also seem like I can use less of. I've fluctuated with dosages, and I seem like I can use less of it and get the same effect that I'm looking for. And so again, if you want to try it out for a month, see what you think. Again, don't take Chewy's word for it. Just try it out for yourself. You can use the promo code on their website. If you go to charlottesweb.com, Jiu-Jitsu, save 15% on the order. You can try it out, see what you think. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't, then no big deal. Move on to something else. But if it does help you, like it has for me and a lot of other people, then again, I think you'll be pleased with the results, and it'll be something you continue to use. Other thanks to our other sponsor, Epic Roll, epicrollbjj.com. Matt over there he produces some, I don't know what you call it, maybe tasteful, jiu-jitsu attire. Like we were talking about old shirts that we used to wear, and I remember back in the day, I used to I was like 18 years old. I used to have all of the little jiu-jitsu jerk-off shirts. Like I say that because I was like a little peckerhead where I did jiu-jitsu and I wanted everybody else to know that I did jiu-jitsu and how cool I was. When I was like 18 years old. That's what we kind of do, don't we? And I remember I had this one shirt that on the back it said it was on the front, it was like Gameness Jiu-Jitsu. Back in the day, I had back when they have all the pit bulls and stuff all over it. And then on the back it was like, if you're scared, say you're scared. And it was just a silly shirt. And I remember everybody looking at me or asking me, what does that even mean? And then I remember my gym, we had a shirt that said that, it was, jiu-jitsu, whatever on the front. And on the back, it said that other martial arts only work in movies. Mm-hmm. And so that was a great one to wear around where people would say, well, I do Taekwondo, karate. Well, they don't work in the streets. They work in the movies.
Well,
Whatever.
you missed the trend of the sparkly bedazzled shirts, which I was into that.
Well-
I'll admit that right now. The old affliction. I had one that was an affliction shirt that was a fleur de lis, like a giant, and it had like little rhinestones
on it,
all over
yeah.
it. And I love that shirt. Like, the shirt's so awesome. And now looking back, I'm like, oh,
Well, I remember back then
was
too.
rough.
Everybody would there would be skulls and everything.
Tap Out had all the skulls.
Everything had skulls, bro. There was like 2009, 2010. I remember going into like clothing stores and like skulls wherever. There's skulls everywhere. I remember I bought a shirt and I didn't even realize there was a skull on it. It was a shirt and it had this cool tree. It was just a tree on it. I thought it was kind of a neat like looking tree the way that the artwork was done. I was like, that's a really cool tree. Did not know that it had a skull. And I remember one day I'm telling someone, yeah, they got all these stupid skulls on the t-shirts, blah, 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 blah. And someone says, well, your shirt has a skull on it. I said, no, it doesn't. It's a tree. They said, look closely. And sure enough, there was a damn skull, like just lightly in the tree. What the hell? I don't want a skull. So, I already did my, I did my time back when I was wearing jiu-jitsu shirts where I was wearing the stuff that was very like in your face and stuff. So
Mistakes were made.
They were. If you would like to wear a jiu-jitsu shirt and not make a mistake like I did, head on over to epicrollbjj.com. You see what I just did there with that segue? It was pretty good, all right, guys?
Set you up.
But seriously, he's got some cool shirts. There's the triangle choke definition shirt. There's the sushi roll shirt. And he's also got some gis and rash guards and stuff like that as well that you can check out. But again, it's all tastefully done. It's cool stuff. I like it. And again, you can use the promo code Chewjitsu, save 15% on the order. And if you would like to support the podcast directly and hook yourself up with some sweet content, you can head on over to the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And we're going to be trying something out soon. The people on the Patreon will figure this out when I post it later on. But I have a Vault membership that I have as well, which is like a thing. But the Patreon is going to also be included on this, where along with the video content, which is everything from seminars to rolls to match breakdowns to this, that, and then also all the podcast extras where we take little bits and pieces of actionable tips and information from the podcast with the different guests that we have, or even sometimes it's just you and me, or Eugene and me rambling. We're also going to include you guys that are on the Patreon on a live thing that I do every 2 weeks. So on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or I don't know if it's got another Eastern Daylight Time, whatever the hell it is. I feel like they've changed it. I do a live thing on a Zoom. So basically, it'll start off. I might have like a little something I'm going to talk about, almost like a little ramble in person. Live, right? And then afterwards I answer questions and I just kind of chat with people and see what they've got going on and try to give some information. So that'll be posted in the area for Patreon people to jump into. So if you would like to be included in on that for less than $0.25 a day, you can get all the content I just talked about, plus the access to the live stream with me with Chewy. So if you think I'm like kind of an interesting guy to listen to and you want to talk to me directly, that would be the place to do it, because otherwise I'm really hard to get a hold of in person.
And we also talked to Charlotte's Web, and we're gonna offer some giveaways, probably monthly giveaways, so that's exclusive only.
So we can just
to
pick
the members. So we're gonna pick. Yeah,
we'll do some little contests with that. So if you'd like that, we're gonna do some different stuff with it. If you want to jump in all that again, less than $0.25 a day. Literally, spare change is lingering around your cushions that you can't even use because there's a coin shortage. Let that coin shortage be your gain.
Don't send us like quarters in the mail.
Well, don't send us quarters because I'm not going to use them. I mean, I'll use my quarters, but I don't want your quarters. You can deposit your quarters to the bank and then use it to pay for your Patreon membership at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
Very good.
With all that said, guys, with all those fun little promos out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the podcast and talk to Devhonte. So cool, man. So yeah. So how did you get started in jiu-jitsu?
I feel like I've told the story like 1,000 times.
Probably have. You can give us like the Cliff Notes version.
No, it's cool. No, it's cool. It's cool. But so when I was in high school, I played baseball, and I played basketball too for a little bit, and I got into boxing because it was kind of something that I've always kind of wanted to do. right? And I remember when I was like 10, I signed up to a boxing gym, and then like I only went for like one day though, and then I never went back. But it wasn't like me; it was like just like my mom couldn't like make it work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Between like work and like getting me there. So and she did not want me walking at night to and from a boxing gym like 20 minutes. It's like that was out of the question. So then like when I got into high school, about 16, I started boxing, and because I was like 16 at that point, it was like, you know, I could like get there myself. So I was boxing, and I boxed for about a year, and then I hurt my wrist playing baseball. No, I hurt my hand playing baseball at first, right? I got hit by a pitch, and then I was like, you know, I'm fine. It's all good. No big deal. And I just kept like, you know how you like push through like things you probably shouldn't push through.
Oh yeah.
So I kept pushing through it, yeah. And then, you know, I wasn't smart enough at the time to put two and two together and realize that like if your hand's busted, you probably shouldn't be punching things. So, you know, I just kept, you know, doing baseball, didn't tell my coach, taping my fingers up, and like still going to boxing. And one day, I guess I probably hit the bag a little too hard or something like that, and in the wrong way. And I broke both my metacarpals and my pinky and ring finger. So at first, for the first few months, I couldn't do anything with my hand. I had a big cast on, and like they wrapped up my hand so like they could force me not to do anything because my doctor didn't think I was like gonna take some time off. So then about maybe like 6 weeks into recovery, he's like, yo, you're healing super fast. We're going to put you in like a soft cast. If you know what like the soft cast is for that injury, like they just cast the two fingers, right? And then the rest of the hand, like the wrist to support the wrist and stuff like that. So I had that soft cast on, and I went from like lifting legs every day to like actually going back to the boxing gym and just doing shadow boxing and then watching the training, right? So like I would watch the sparring and like the other guys. So because actually the gym that I trained at, there was a lot of professional fighters. So it was fun just to like watch them beat each other up. You know what I mean? And then one of the guys, he's actually a pro fighter too. He was at the time. And he was like, yo, dude, have you ever tried, jiu-jitsu? And I was like, no. And then he was like, dude, like, you know, you can't use your hands. I mean, you can't punch anything right now because I couldn't punch anything at this point. But I could resume physical activity as long as I wasn't like punching anything, or like I couldn't play baseball because the vibrations, like if I hit the bat and if I hit the ball with the bat and like the vibrations, it could re-break my finger. So I was like, oh man, like I still can't really do anything, but I'm still like coming in, shadow boxing, stuff like that. He was like, yo, you should try jiu-jitsu. Like it's gonna make your hand, like the grip strength that you get from doing jiu-jitsu is crazy. It actually might help your hand recover. Right, a little bit. He didn't really know jiu-jitsu. He just knew of jiu-jitsu. Because like now, looking in hindsight, jiu-jitsu probably was the last thing I should have been doing. But I said, screw it. Nah, I didn't even. I asked my doctor, and like he didn't really know about jiu-jitsu either. So he was like, "Yeah, go ahead, go for it." And like if he knew what jiu-jitsu was, he probably wouldn't have like said, you know, to do it. But I went in and I tried it the first day, and I loved it. You know, and I stopped doing everything. Like dropped baseball, basketball. I stopped doing all like the school activities I was doing. I made all the time in the world so that I can get to training before school and then go back to training after school. Right. So I would train at like 6 a.m. before school, and then I would train in the night. As soon as I got out of school, I was running right to the gym. I quit my job too. I had like two little like jobs that I was doing to like help me like kind of like pay for things and like save, because I was like planning to go to college. So I was just like, all right, screw all that stuff. I'm just gonna train jiu-jitsu.
What was it about that? I'm just curious. I always love asking this question. Like that complete like turnaround, like going from something you had really no idea about, and then all of a sudden, like a day, just committing to that fully.
Yeah, so you know what it was for me, and I'm not gonna lie and say I committed fully, right? Because there's a little asterisk with that, right? Because like, to answer the first part of your question, yeah, for me it was just the idea that I could try to like do as much as I can to like physically harm this person, and then like not hurt them actually, and be completely exhausted at the same time. Like that exhaustion feeling that you get after training is like you can't really find that in any other sport other than grappling, in my opinion. You know what I mean? There's something about like grappling, like, and not just like jiu-jitsu, like even wrestling. Like I have a lot of fun training with wrestlers, too, because like the exhaustion that you get from doing like grappling. It's just different. You know what I mean? Like you get exhausted like striking too. And striking is very interesting in a way too, because like when you're like reeling, you know what I mean? You're tired and you got to defend yourself, and this guy's like throwing haymakers at you. It's pretty crazy too. But like jiu-jitsu, like when someone pins you and you're like almost defenseless,
Yeah.
and you have to sit there and accept that, it's a very, very different like kind of like excitement. And like I was very excited about the psychological trauma that caused me, and I like wanted to like I mean, and so like I just kept coming back. Like I remember the first day, my at the time instructor, he was like, I don't normally let people roll the first day, but like you're catching on really quick, you know, I think you'll be fine. And I was fine, but like I got destroyed, but I was like having a good time with it, you know what I mean? I didn't take myself seriously. I didn't know what taking myself seriously was at that point either. So like I was just having fun, and the guys were just loving the fact that I was just like, you know, going for it. And so that was cool to me. Like that, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I think you guys know that too. It's hard to really put that into words, but like that, like kind of like there's a very primal.
Well, and there's something so like you know, with grappling, there's a shared experience that you're having with someone. So you're exhausted, but it's like with like multiple people. There's a vibe in the room and everything else. And then
Absolutely.
And then also it's different, like you were saying, like with like boxing. Like I remember sparring and doing like kickboxing sparring when I was fighting, and you know, you would get exhausted, but afterwards you hurt. Like I mean, like you know, you get kicked in the legs, you get punched in the face, your jaw's clicking and swollen.
Your brain hurts sometimes.
Yeah, you feel rough. Whereas like you and I could grapple and we could go after each other. And, you know, I mean, literally brutalize each other in a certain way that grappling allows. And afterwards you're exhausted, but it's kind of pleasant in a way because, you know, you're exhausted. Your body has nothing left in you, but you don't feel broken, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Really, with as far as like your brain or you don't feel like your legs have just gotten kicked by baseball bats for 20 minutes or something like that.
Dude, you don't feel like you're taking years off your life. Like when I used to box, sometimes I would like feel like I'm taking years off my life, you know, helping some of those guys get ready for fights, you know, and jiu-jitsu is like, it's a very pure experience in a sense where you're kind of like, you just have to face a lot of things psychologically that you can kind of like run from in real life on the mat. You know what I mean? Like the mat brings out the best and the worst of you sometimes. And that's cool. You know, having to deal with that stuff is very cool. And for me, like having to deal with that excitement and a little bit of fear and kind of like unknown, like it was intriguing. You know what I mean? I remember when my instructor mounted me for the first time back then, I almost like lost my shit. Excuse my language, but I don't know if you can curse on this podcast.
You can curse. You can go say it.
You know, I almost lost. I lost it. I was like, holy crap, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, you know, that first mount suffocation. And then like that kind of was like that was like the tip of the iceberg. At that point, I was just like, wow, I gotta like figure out how to deal with that. You know what I mean? Because like for me, even then, like when I started, it was just kind of like an innocent kind of like, you know, I want to like learn how to defend myself kind of thing. And like I'm like, man, if someone does that to me on the street, I can't like ask them to get off. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
sir, would you please not put so much weight on me? Could you just ease up a little bit?
A little bit to the left. Let free my shoulder, please. You know. Yeah. So like that for me, like really like, you know, hooked me. And because like to the second part of that question, where like why there's an asterisk is I went hard for like 3 months and then I had to stop because I couldn't afford tuition anymore. You know what I mean? And I had to like, you know, go work a little bit more, save up some cash, and like try to come back for a few more months. Like I was like, that was my plan. I would like train for a few months. Like originally that was my plan. It was going to be like train for a few months, take a few months off or few weeks off, get a bit of cash, and then come back and train again, take some time off, get some cash, come back and train again. And then my instructor at the time called me. He's like, yo, where have you been, dude? You went from coming every day, you know, twice a day, helping out with the kids, and now you're just like gone for like a month. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm waiting on a second paycheck so I can come back and like pay tuition, you know, and then I'll be good for a few months and I can like, you know, and he was like, oh man, just come train, like, you know, clean the gym and help out with the kids and you'll be fine.
That's cool.
And then when that happened, I just like was training all the time, you know, and that's when I really like hit my stride and I haven't stopped training since, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting, man. Like just going from just almost like taking your life in a completely different direction. You know, it's like, I mean, baseball is one thing, you know, and basketball, kind of team sports, right? You're going, you know, first of all, I actually want to know what your interest in boxing was initially. Was your plan to like fight, or is it just defend yourself? Like, what did you kind of want to do with boxing, and then all that stuff?
Yeah, so like, I kind of wanted to do MMA, to be honest with you, and so that's why jiu-jitsu kind of seemed like a good idea too at the time to try like give it a shot, because I thought at the time that a lot of MMA guys did jiu-jitsu or some kind of grappling, so it'd be cool to get my feet wet. But then like also at the same time too, like where I grew up, boxing was cool to do, you know what I mean? And so naturally, if you want to do martial arts, because I used to watch like the Bruce Lee, like, so in the hood, like when you're a kid, like you watch a lot of karate flicks, at least in my generation, like, like
I'll watch a ton of martial arts stuff too.
Yeah, dude, like, man, like Bruce Lee's like Enter the Dragon, all that stuff, of course, obviously Bruce Leroy, and dude, like the Tai Chi Master, like the 5 Deadly Venoms, like all those like arms, like the boy with the golden arms, like all those old school karate flick tapes.
Yeah,
I had all. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like because I wanted them, like my mom had them in the house, and like it was like you could watch channels 1 through 10 all day, or you could like just watch these karate flicks. So we had like 20 of them. They were cheap, and like we just kept them on rerun. And so that's when I started liking like martial arts as a whole, as a kid, and I always wanted to do it since I was a kid, and I just never had the opportunity to. And then when you're also a kid, people are like, oh, why are you wearing those pajamas, or like that suit? You look retarded, or something like that. You're just like, I don't that route, But like boxing is cool because like, Floyd Mayweather's cool, Roy Jones Jr., like, and in our neighborhood, like that was cool. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do boxing first and like ease my way into this other stuff, So that's how I kind of started off with boxing first. And when I was a kid, for some reason, I really liked Muhammad Ali, like the person that he was. Yeah. So like that helped too, and so yeah, Muhammad Ali, and I remember like what was that guy, Evander Holyfield? I liked him too. Like, like the stories in boxing for me like was really intriguing too as a kid. So like it made it even more like intriguing to like step into. And then like boxing is relatively cheap. Boxing is like wrestling. To wrestle is relatively cheap. You know what I mean? Like you pay like $30 for a wrestling tournament, if I'm not mistaken, like for like a regular, local, like just jump in there and like wrestle. And boxing, you pay like $15-20 a month. You know what I mean? Like at least that's what they were charging me. I was like a 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid in there. Yeah. And they're like, just give us like $10 and you'll be fine. And it was easy to do. You know what I mean? And then the guys that were there, they're really nice. They saw that I came every day, that I was kind of dedicated, even though I didn't know what I was doing. Like before I like got a trainer, I would just go in there and hit the bag for like 2 hours. I wouldn't even talk to anybody because I didn't know anybody. And then like I didn't kind of want to like just like be that guy that kind of like was like, hey, can you help me out? I was just like going in there and just like winging it, run on the treadmill for a little bit. And like whatever I would see other people doing, I would just copy. And I think that like I got a little bit of respect from the guys that were there because they're like, nobody's helping this kid, but he's like trying to learn on his own, So, and then I started like getting help from coaches, and like then like I didn't know that you're supposed to pay these people to help you. Like I used to pay just to get access into the gym, and I didn't know you were supposed to pay these people to like help you, but they would just help me and not say anything, I guess, because they wanted to help out, this kid who's like coming in here, trying to do his thing. So yeah, and yeah.
I was laughing. I was talking to someone about this just the other night. We were talking about because I assume did you grow up in a fairly poor neighborhood when you were younger?
Mm-hmm.
So I did too. And so like I remember I was talking to one of the other young guys in the gym, and we were talking about like when we grew up in like our neighborhoods, there's like it's weird the things that get valued. So like for instance, I was talking about like when I was a kid, I would read books and almost like tuck them away when people would come around because I'm like, they'd like, what are you doing? You're reading books? Oh, you're so stupid. And he was talking about like he wanted to learn how to play the violin, right? And so he was like learning how to play the violin, and his buddies that lived in the same project as him, he said they'd like come around like, dude, you're being so stupid playing a violin, whatever. And then as we get older, we're like looking back at it, these are like useful things, being able to read, playing an instrument, these are good skills to have, but back then, even it was with me too, like we valued like everybody was obsessed with like the fighters. I remember me and my buddies, we used to go in the backyard. We would watch Bloodsport. That was like my martial arts movie. We would go out in the backyard and just beat the crap out of each other and try to mimic what we saw, and, eventually got into some sort of martial arts. One question I wanted to ask you about the gym. So your coach, who was your first coach the coach that basically said, hey, like, just come in and train and help out with the kids, clean the mats, whatever. Who was that?
Yeah, Edson Carvalho was my first instructor.
Okay. And was there kind of an element of maybe, I don't know if there was or not, but was there an element of like mentorship there with him? Like when he brung you in, trying to like maybe help you out a little bit with everything?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think he was just like a nice guy, and the same with the same mentality like the guys in the boxing gym. It was just kind of like, this kid's pretty consistent. This kid works hard. He has a goal, or he has like a few goals, and I think that like everybody knew, especially at my old gym, like everybody knew I was broke, but like I never ever asked for anything for the most part.
Sure.
Like they would like try to help me out, and I would like be like, nah, I'm good. Like I used to. For me to get to the gym was like an hour commute, right? I would like have to walk 20 minutes, take the bus for like another 20 minutes. And then from the bus stop, it'd be like a 5 or 10 minute walk from there. So like almost an hour to get from one side of Patterson to the other side. Right. And that was primarily because there was a ton of traffic and stuff like that. Like during those times, like the prime time to do jiu-jitsu is between like 5 and 9. So like when I get out of school, it's about 3:30. It's hell, and downtown Patterson. So getting on that bus, it would be like almost like commuting through New York City. I'd be in one spot for like 10, 15 minutes easily. Wow. So people would be like, hey man, like, we'll give you a ride. And then my mentality was like, I don't know these people. Like, they can give me a ride and I'll never be seen again. You know what I mean? At first, so like, I'm like, I don't really like, I'm good. You know what I mean? Then I get to know them, but at the same time, like, I don't really want to ask other people for help and stuff like that. But people are always trying to like, I think somebody told me this once, and they're like, when they see someone trying to help themselves, like you kind of want to help that person who's trying to help themselves kind of thing. So like, I think the same thing apply, with Edson in a sense where he's like, this kid's a good kid. This kid works hard, and, I want to help him do whatever he's going to do. You know what I mean?
It makes complete sense because actions speak louder than words, right? So I mean, if you come in and you're putting in the effort, then people will see that and they'll see what you're doing. And people are always, I mean, I know in the gym with us, like anytime we see a young guy or young woman that's coming in, they're putting forth that effort. If something comes up, we want to help them because they put so much forward with their action. We're like, we've got to help you. Whereas there's been people before where they come out of the get-go. They're like hands open, like, give me something. I feel like I'm entitled to this, that, whatever. And they haven't put forth that forward action. So I think that probably all these people saw in you this young guy that's willing to work his face off in the gym and being consistent. And those are the kind of people you want to keep around because they can do something with it. And that they're not asking for it. They're like, they're putting the work for it and they just want it. And then you're willing to help people like that.
100%.
Yeah. I'm curious as to like, you have this at a young age, this really very, very strong self-reliance and kind of motivation, getting to the gym every day, not wanting a handout from any, where's that from? Like, where do you feel like you got that? And it seems like it's really, obviously helped you get pretty far in jiu-jitsu and be successful. Where do you think that came from?
Well, I mean, so it's just like Chewy said. So like, if you grow up in like, like these like poverty-stricken like neighborhoods, you realize very quickly that no one's gonna help you. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I've been beaten into a pulp, waiting for someone to like, help me out, and watching everyone just watch me get destroyed. And I've been in scenarios where like, like you're in like, dangerous situations, and then like you expect like, the authorities to like do what they're supposed to do, and they don't come. You know what I mean? Like in my neighborhood, like it was just like, you're better off like trying to handle a situation that would warrant you calling the cops. You're better off just handling it yourself, running, or like, escaping, like trying to escape, than calling the cops. Because by the time the cops get there, you're gonna be dead, robbed, or or worse. If it can even be worse. So. And I've actually had that happen where like you call the cops and it's been 30 minutes to an hour. You figured out your way out of that situation, but you're like, damn, they still didn't come, and they don't come. And that's not any knock on the police,
sure,
or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying I understood really quickly that like
it's the reality of it.
Yeah, the reality of it. If you're gonna get anything or you're gonna do anything in life, period, like you can't expect for someone to help you, because maybe sometimes they will if you're lucky, but more times than not, you're gonna have to like finesse life yourself. So like as a kid, like I realized like that was my mentality. And I saw my mom. My mom has always been a pretty hard worker, and like nobody's handing her anything, you know, like being a single mom raising these kids. So like in my mentality it was like, you know, I didn't like asking her for anything for that reason, because I knew how hard she was working. Like the last thing she needs is for me to ask for something, you know, on top of what she's already doing. So like when I went out to would do my own things, like my mentality was already from the jump, you know, like no one's going to help you. No one's going to do anything for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I never expected anything from anyone else. I don't, even to this day, really, you know, like I tell people all the time, like I don't expect much from anyone. And if I do something for someone, like the goal isn't for me to get something in return, because I expect that that's not going to happen. It might be a little bit of a pessimistic approach, but like that's just kind of like how I look at it, because like when you have expectations, right, typically a lot of times you get dropped on your behind, you know. But if you just come into the situation expecting nothing in return at all for anything that you do, then chances are, you know, it's easier to stay even keel about things. You know what I mean? And when good things happen, and a lot of good things have happened in my life, don't let me try to paint this picture. I'm not trying to paint this picture that I've only had a lot of bad things happen, but, you know, because I've had a lot of great things happen over the last, like, since I started doing jiu-jitsu, actually. Yeah. You know, and even before that, I've met a lot of great people. But those bad things help you reinforce the reality that you have to expect whatever you're going to have come that changes in your life has to come from within first. You know what I mean? And that's just always been my mentality. Like it has to start with me. And if something bad happens, the solution has to start with me. You know what I mean? I can't look for anyone else to figure out or to start the process that comes with like finding that solution. It has to come from me. So like, even to this day, like I don't really expect, even in jiu-jitsu, like, you know, I don't expect jiu-jitsu to just like kind of like figure itself out. Like if anything's going to change about my gym or my career, it has to start like from within first. Like I can't look at my competitor and be like, oh, you know, this guy cheated me. I have to look at myself and be like, what did I do that I allowed myself to be in this situation to have a less than desirable outcome? And how can I change that the next time? And if it takes me 20 times, that's fine. The 21st time, you know, I'll get it right. Or the 22nd time if need be, you know?
Yeah, I think you manage your expectations that way. Like you have a certain reality and you just know like, hey, I'm not going to be disappointed regardless, you know, because I don't expect anything. On top of that, like I wanted to ask you, like, was it hard for you to accept help if somebody was like offering to help you out, like at the gym, your coach, were you like, are they up to something? Or was it hard for you were you kind of standoffish a little bit from accepting help from others?
Oh yeah, in the beginning for sure. Yeah. But well, you know, it's funny because like I was explaining this to one of my friends today. I had lunch and I was trying to explain to him like in inner city communities, right, you're not really taught, right, how the process that it takes to become successful. You're not really taught that process, right? For the most part, you kind of have to, if you're going to become successful, you tell yourself one day, like, I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Right. And you'll figure out everything along the way. Right. And so in a lot of like communities where people are a little bit more fortunate, in my opinion, like there's a system that kind of allowed them to have success. Sure. And what they do is they usher that system onto their children. So their children can see like, all right, my parents did X, Y, and Z. How can I do this? But then I need to do this better. And that mentality of doing better is also conveyed from the parent to the child, right? So there's almost like a legacy. There's a legacy of how we got to where we are and how you're going to do better, right? In my opinion, I feel like. And so like where I came from, like there is no pipeline for that. You know what I mean? Because most people, like their education stopped at high school or earlier. You know what I mean? Like I don't think my grandfather finished middle school. You know what I mean? Like he just started working at like 12 or 11. So like you have to figure that stuff out yourself, you know? So like, it's just like, as you go on like the journey of life, you start like piecing things together and then you just revert back to that like, I guess like outline that you've created through experience. Yeah. And that's how you continue to like grow. I don't know if that answers your question.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of studies to prove that too, where let's say if the parents come from a more impoverished situation, when they get out of it, their children have a better chance of, getting higher education, making more money, all this stuff. And it continues on. It's a cycle. Like you said, it's a legacy that you're leaving behind, that you begin or end or whatever it is. Here's a question I have for you. Cause again, I came from a situation, again, I don't want to say similar, but single mom. Did you have brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have a bunch.
Okay. Are you the oldest or youngest? Or
yeah, I'm the oldest.
Okay, so I was like the oldest, and I remember almost like having a similarity thing where I felt like anything I had to do myself, because mom was taking care of all my two baby sisters. So I had to go, if I wanted something, I had to go rake leaves, cut grass. I had to go, get some money somewhere. I got a job when I was like 14 years old because busting tables, because like I got to get the money myself. But when I got into jiu-jitsu, one of the things that was interesting is a lot of the older guys would start, like, I was naturally drawn to them because I wasn't very close to my father. I had a few other guys I was close to in my life, like my grandfather and stuff, but my dad, I wasn't. And I had this natural thing that would happen where these older guys would see me doing stuff and they would say, let me show you something, man. Like one of the guys who's a mentor to this day of mine, where one day I came into the gym and I was waiting for class to start. I was reading an investment book because one of my buddies I'd met through jiu-jitsu across the country was like, he said, hey man, read this book. It's a good idea. It's about saving money in the proper way, whatever. So I'm reading the book, and this guy owned a ton of real estate. And he said, well, man, let me show you some things, cause I would drive, 45, 50 minutes, 1 hour, whatever, one way to get to the gym and, in the day, cause it was all the way across on the other end of town. And he would show me these houses he bought, how much he bought them for, what he sold them for. He owned a couple Subways. He had all these different businesses. And it was like that when all of a sudden I start to get perspectives from people that are not from my neck of the woods. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you're saying, man, there's another way to do this whole thing. Like all I knew was this because that's what I'm surrounded by. And all of a sudden now there's this whole other thing. Did you have, or do you have any experiences like that where when you started going to jiu-jitsu, maybe there were, or other different places, but you had some sort of elder male mentorship in a way where these guys are like, they maybe expose you to different perspectives that you didn't know previously? That kind of, does it make sense?
Oh, absolutely. That goes back to the original question that Eugene asked, though. Like, that's how I began to understand that, like, it's okay to accept help. You know what I mean? Like, you're not looking for it, but when it falls in your lap, you'd be foolish not to accept it, right?
Yeah.
Because like, that's pretty much how I'm like here today. You know what I mean? Like, I had to understand that like it was at first in my mind, it was like, don't ask for help ever. You know what I mean? Because you can't really trust people.
Right.
And then are they really out to help you? Blah, blah, blah. They're probably like, there's something at the end that they want, you know what I mean? Or something like this. And then I realized after, like, especially doing jiu-jitsu, because I have met a lot of people doing jiu-jitsu, different kinds of people, and, really wealthy people, really poor people, like all in between. Right. And I realized that a lot of these people who have become successful in life, like they didn't just wake up one day and was just like, yeah, I got everything figured out. I'm going to do the X, Y, and Z. Like there are people who are helping them, giving them a little bit of information, and they're running with that information to the next time another person comes and they give them a little bit more to help leap them forward again. And that's just how you kind of like, you get through life, because in that process, you're also able to avoid making mistakes that someone else has already made.
Yeah.
And that's the most efficient. That's the key, is like being efficient in how you're going to like scale your success. You know what I mean? And I try to explain this to my students all the time. Like, you guys, if you guys can just listen, right, you'll make a lot less mistakes than I made, and I made a lot of them, and I can, still today I made a lot. I will make a lot more. If you guys learn from the stuff that I've went through and I've had to find out the hard way, then that's a little bit less that you'll have to deal with, and you can circumnavigate to help you get to where you want to go a little bit more faster. And that through jiu-jitsu, I still to this day continue to experience that, and I have experienced that from literally day one. And so like that's why like jiu-jitsu is like something that like it's not just like, oh, I'm competing or I'm training, every day. Like it's kind of like it is like my life at this point, because like, and I'm perfectly okay with saying that. There, like, people will tell you that you have to have a balance, and you do. There's a level of balance that's necessary. But like for me, like I literally just wake up and kind of live jiu-jitsu, because like the best people in my life I've literally met through jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like my gym is such an important piece of my life and who I am, because like the people that I've met through my gym have like literally changed my life, like opened my perspective, like it allowed me to experience new things, you know what I mean, with no strings attached. So to the point where like I'm largely the person that I am today because of the interactions with these people. So, and that's just not men, like that's men, women alike, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You know, and actually some of the moms at my gym have taught me like so much. I tell my mom all the time, like, I'm like, and she actually came to the gym one time and said this, is like, she's like, you have like 20 different mothers. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
She was like, I feel pretty comfortable, like, you know, leaving you, you know, like, because I don't see my mom that much. I call her almost every day.
Yeah.
And I call my granddad every day, but like, you know, I don't get to see them that much. And like when they come to the gym, like she's just always like, you know, I feel pretty comfortable leaving you here because you have like 20 different, like all the moms of my kids, like, and essentially she's like, yeah, they're like your moms too. So like, I feel pretty comfortable, you know, when I don't see you for like a month or two, you know what I mean? And you're doing everything you're doing. At least I know you got some people who are going to make sure that you're good. You know what I mean? So like jiu-jitsu is powerful on so many different levels, and I don't even think people realize it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you know, because to me, like going back to, it gives you like almost like a tribe of elders, which would have been a fixture of old tribal societies. Like, hey, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Is there shared wisdom that could be given to these new people coming up? And you get to be around these places where you have all these people, mixtures of experiences and socioeconomic levels coming in there, and they're all just chatting very freely, and they're brought together by a common bond. But also like the work balance thing, I was talking about that earlier today to someone. So many people want to make this distinction, this duality. There's work and then there's life. But, you know, if you're coming from a place of, it's literally a manifestation of something in you, right? Your gym, your creation, your teaching, all of this is coming from you. There's no difference between the two. It is your life because it's coming from a place. It's not like, you know, you don't get up in the morning like, all right, I got to go to work. You know, it's like, I've got to go do my thing. It's just a part of who I am. It's an extension.
You wake up, actually, it's like you wake up and it's like brushing your teeth almost.
Right.
And that's what I do. I wake up, I roll out of bed, brush my teeth, wash my face, and I'm on the way to the gym. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, if I had to wake up, like every day I wake up and I don't go to the gym, it's awkward. You know what I mean? Like if I'm sitting there, like, and I have some time to just not do anything, I'm just kind of like, interesting.
Something's off. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is weird. What do I do now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, it's almost like such second nature. Even if I'm not training, like it's funny because like sometimes I like, when I don't have like much to do in terms of like competitions and stuff like that, especially pre-COVID, if there's a class that's being taught at my gym and I don't have to teach it, I'd be there watching.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, yo, like, why don't you go do this or why don't you go do that? It's like, I don't really have nothing else to do. Like,
yeah,
I'd rather just hang out here. Like, they're like, yo, you're supposed to be using this time to like relax and like recover. I'm like, I am recovering.
This is where I want to be, right?
Yeah, like, what else am I gonna do?
I do the same thing. So, man, curious, because we talked about like, you know, mentorship and being around people, you know, and this and that. How did the whole thing with like Murilo like turn into? Because obviously that's your coach now, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, because you know, and he's a badass in jiu-jitsu, you know, and has probably the deepest coaching voice I've ever heard of anyone, right? Like when he's coaching, you can just hear him like his voice kind of thundering across the room. Yeah. So how did you guys come in contact with one another?
So interestingly enough, I knew of Murilo before I met him, but I didn't know that I knew him until I met him. As weird as that sounds, because like I had watched his matches online before. And like, I'm like, oh, I know of the name. You know what I mean? I didn't really like have a face to put to it too, because like you watch matches, but if you don't really like, especially back then, like in 2015, like you watch matches, you don't really always put a face to the person you're watching. Because like, for example, like me, like I use Instagram and stuff like that, but back then I rarely followed any of the jiu-jitsu guys doing Instagram. Yeah. I mean, I'm on Instagram doing jiu-jitsu. Like I had my Instagram and I was just like kind of like, you know, like on it just to post for my sponsor, really, you know, or like to post like, you know, dumb stuff with my friends. You know, I wasn't really like studying anyone or looking up on anyone or keeping an eye on anyone. And even now I rarely do that to an extent, but like I kind of know the people in the community better, right? And so like when Unity was opening, I saw all these like all the advertising about like, you know, the Meows are coming to town, Leandro, Murilo, all these like, you know, these world champions, and they're going to be training this X, Y, and Z date. And I was like, I was already looking to change gyms because the gym that I was at originally, well, I wouldn't say already looking to change gyms. At that point, I was kind of just like, I like the gym that I'm at. I don't really want to leave the gym that I'm at, but I need to train elsewhere to like kind of keep trying to like be a competitor, right? Like the goal for me was to split my time at 2 gyms, right? One gym for work and then another gym to hang out with my buddies, you know what I mean? And still like train with my friends and stuff like that, because I was at an older gym. You know, a lot of the guys were just recreational and they didn't really have any aspirations of competing, you know what I mean? And my instructor too, he wasn't really like looking to be a competitive coach or anything like that. He was helping me out where he could, but like that wasn't the focus, you know what I mean? And so that's cool. That's 100% cool, you know what I mean? That's like, there's gyms for everybody. And so my goal was to like split my time, to like still keep my ties there and to train with another elite, like any elite level gym that I could kind of feel like I had a good connection with, you know what I mean? So I started like shopping around. I was looking into I went to Marcelo's, I even stopped at Henzo's, and I kind of like Marcelo's, actually, believe it or not. Even though I ended up at Unity, I went in there and I was like, oh, these guys train hard, you know what I mean? And that was cool. I got beat up by like Mateus, Munchie, Dylan, and John Satava, all those like all those guys, you know. I was just getting destroyed as a blue belt, but it was fun. You know, I kept coming back. I went like I want to say like, you know, I can only afford at that time to come once a week, but I was coming in like every Saturday or Monday, depending on whatever I could swing. And I was like, all right, maybe this gym is where I could train, you know what I mean? And then I started seeing all the advertising about Unity, and I was like, you know what, let me give these guys a try first before I commit to anything, because like it's not going to hurt me to try a class, you know. And I went in there the first day after I actually competed at the Atlanta Open. I flew back and I went to the first pro training. And I trained with those guys, and I was like, holy crap. Like, wow. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like mind boggled by like the intensity of the room, the level of the grapplers there, and just like the way the training was structured. Like, I was just like, it was kind of like, you know, like falling in love all over again, you know, kind of thing. I was just like, wow, like this is what I need to be doing. You know what I mean? And then I was like, all right, I'm not going to go to Marcelo's now, you know, no offense or shame, anything to Marcelo's. It was just a better fit at Unity, you know what I mean? For like what I wanted. And I realized very quickly after taking one class from Murilo, like this guy was like no one else, you know, in terms of like the attention to detail that he put into his teaching, and then the amount of investment that he put into, you know, what he was doing. And so back then there were classes all day at Unity, and he taught every one of them, you know what I mean? Like every day, you know? So I was like, that was another thing. I was like, wow, like no one's work ethic is like this. You know, and I mean, like I've known guys to teach every day, but to teach like 5-6 classes throughout the day by yourself and not ask anyone for help, you know, I mean, like literally teaching from like 12 to 10 p.m., no help, like you doing your training. And like he would do pro training, go lift right after pro training, and be back in time for the adult class at 5. You know what I mean? Actually, adult class is at 5:30. He'd be training an hour before the adult class so that he can get his second training session in before he had to teach. You know what I mean? So like, I'm seeing like this level of commitment, and like, it's different when you're at a gym and you see like someone running the gym, maybe they have the credentials, but they're actually doing it at the same time. Like you see them like kind of like practicing what they preach. Yeah. That was a big sell for me. You know what I mean? And so I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. And at the time it was even better because like pro training was free 3 times a week. You know what I mean? So that took a lot of cash that I didn't have to pay for, you know, out of my pocket, you know. I mean, I kept it in my pocket at first. And then like after like a month or 2 weeks, not even, pro training was not enough. You know what I mean? Like actually Murilo just kind of told me, he's like, yo, come to night class. And so I was like, all right, fine, I'll come to night class. And then I would do all the night classes at that time. So like, from like 5:30 to like literally almost 10:30. And he was cool. And I was just like, at that time, that was another time where I'm like, I don't know how I can swing this tuition, because he never really asked me to swing tuition, but I'm not going to train in someone's gym and not swing tuition. You know what I mean? Like that's how my mentality was at that point. So I was like using my like savings to like pay for like the first month. Not my savings. My sponsor used to give me a little stipend. And so I would just pretty much hand that over to Murilo when I got it. And it was never enough. It was not enough. And then he wouldn't, and I'd be like, yo, I'm going to get you the rest. Just give me a little bit of time. And he'd never like flip out or anything like that. And like now being older, like he was probably looking at me like how I look at some of my students and be like, you're not going to pay me. And it's fine. I appreciate the effort in trying to pay me. Just make sure you don't miss training. You know what I mean? It's like kind of one of those things. And then he kind of did the same thing my first instructor did, where he was just like, look, dude, I get it. I want to help you on your goals, and you just do X, Y, and Z, and you're working for the gym now. You know what I mean? So, and then like from there, it was just like he could have done nothing else for me at that point, but like that right there, giving me that opportunity was just like enough to like for him to be on my team for life. You know what I mean? Because like it goes back to what I was saying before. Like a lot of people will look at and this happens a lot because I see this all the time. A lot of people will look at the jiu-jitsu instructor and they expect their instructor to kind of to turn them into this world champion. You know what I mean? And I think Chewy, you can attest to that. Like people will come in and like, my goal is to do this. And like, they just expect you to like pretty much take every step of that walk that they're supposed to walk for them. They don't really understand that your job is to kind of like give them to like help shed light on the path.
We're guides.
And help them. And yeah, we're just guidance. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. So like, in my opinion, like when he did that for me, that was enough. Like he could have done nothing else. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be a black belt champ. You know what I mean? Like from that day forward, I came in every day and I trained as many sessions as my body would let me train. Probably more than I should have, because I lost a ton of weight. Like I went from like being 205 to like 185. It was like ridiculous, but I was like having a ball. And yeah, like for me, like I was just like, yo, this guy's like good in my book forever. You know what I mean? And then he just kept doing things that would make you be like, come on. Like, I'm not going to be able to pay you back, bro. Just stop. Like you've done enough, kind of thing. And like, he's just a genuinely good person. And so like, I it's funny because like people are like, oh, your professor, your coach, like he's my coach, my professor, but he's really like a brother. You know what I mean? We're like, pretty much anything he needs, there's no reason for me to even question the willingness to help him out, because he just does so much for people that, I feel like everybody kind of feels like that, like they'll never be able to do enough deeds to help repay back the deeds that he's done to them without even trying. You know what I mean? So he's just a good dude, and he's helped me see jiu-jitsu in a much different way. That's when he started painting the picture of what it meant to be a professional, to take your craft seriously, to study your craft, to chip away every day at a specific goal, to set long-term, short-term, daily goals and stuff like that. So like, that's how I because of him, I kind of like was able to like start becoming a professional grappler, and not just a professional grappler, but an actual like adult too. You know what I mean? Like I thought I was adulting, you know what I mean? And people would tell me that I was doing pretty good for my age, but like, then I realized that I could do a lot more, you know what I mean? And I feel like we're always realizing we can do a lot more, but he kind of was like the first person to like, kind of like get me to be like, all right, these things are real. They're attainable. This is how we're going to attain them. You know what I mean? And then that was able to give me a little bit of like the mindset to kind of do that for myself even now, so like, yeah, that's how we kind of became professor and student, and, kind of like teammates in life kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a lot of, Chewy being my coach for probably over 10 years now. A couple things that like I respect about, and it's some variability, because I've had some other coaches, and like Chewy like leads from the front. Like you guys competed at ADCC, for example, like he goes out and does the thing, you guys go out there and compete, you lead from the front, but also I think like you find potential in people and you invest in them. Like I think what Murilo was doing was investing in you. He didn't expect you to pay him back. And like Chewy does that too. We have a lot of students that like maybe need a little push or need a little help, and you see potential, you see they're willing to put the work in. You just got to give them the opportunity to do it. So like that builds so much respect to your students, because your students want to support you, and they want to like, you're basically an extension of your coach now. Like you represent that gym, that coach, that style of grappling. You're that, like, you're kind of like the marketing for, for a school in a way. So it's just, you're an investment, so, and that's what I think, like leading from the front is so powerful, you know, because like you're not just saying it, he's doing it, you know.
100%.
Yeah, and I'm curious, man. How would you describe yourself as a coach? Like now that you've transitioned to coaching, what do you think you give to your students? How do you describe yourself?
That's a very weird question to kind of like verbalize and answer for.
Is it weird to answer because like
yeah, you're kind of like talking about yourself, you know?
Yeah,
you know, like
but you
almost
have
like you're
to,
like
right?
kind of like hyping yourself in a way, kind of like if you say it, like, I don't know, it's weird, but to answer your question to the best of my abilities, right? I think that I would like to say that I'm like a very dedicated coach. You know what I mean? But most importantly, kind of like just what you see is kind of what you get. You know what I mean? I remember one of the things that I kind of feel like I respect about people in general is just kind of like transparency. You know what I mean? Like this is one thing I like about like my relationship with Murilo, is because like if I have a problem, I can sit down and be like, yo, like this is my problem. And feel like by the end of my conversation, like I have clarity on like how we're going to handle this situation. Or if like, I feel like, you know, maybe there's something that I did that he didn't really appreciate. Like I can always gain clarity as to like what caused the situation, how we're going to handle the situation moving forward, and just how not to avoid those situations. Right. Cause I'm kind of like a very cut and dry person, like in my own right, or like, I try to eliminate as much extra stuff as possible because life is too short and I got too much that I want to do to be wasting time doing things that are just not conducive to me moving forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I like people that are transparent. So I try to be like that in my teaching and my relationships just with people in general and my students, and just how like I handle the gym every day. Like you're never going to walk in and I'm going to like kind of fluff you. You know what I mean? Like either you want to train jiu-jitsu or you don't. If you want to train jiu-jitsu, like what are your goals? I'm going to help you reach them. If you don't want to train jiu-jitsu, that's fine. I'll try to convince you to train jiu-jitsu to give it a shot. You know what I mean? But if you don't, that's cool. Like we can still be friends. You know, a lot of my students that don't train anymore and don't want to train anymore for whatever reason, maybe I'm actually still good friends with them to this day. You know what I mean? And, you know, some of them message me all the time and just be like, yo, how you doing? What's up? Dude, you want to get lunch? Yeah, sure. Cool. You know, because they also appreciate the transparency, you know? So I think that's like, if there was one thing that I would really highlight, I think that what you see is always going to be what you get, even at my gym as a whole. Like I try to very, very consciously keep that culture a focal point of like how we handle every day. You know what I mean? Like if you come into training, you're not feeling that great. All right, that's fine. That's cool. I get it. Work hard. You know, if you get beat up today, like, you know, hey, it was a tough day. You know, we just move on to the next one. You know, you still have fun, right? Yeah, I did. It sucked, but I had fun. You know, like let's do it again tomorrow kind of thing. You know what I mean? You know, I think that's what kind of makes the gym pretty fun where we are and what we're doing, because like the extra stuff just isn't there, you know, and I try to like keep it that way. People come in like that, I try to help explain that to them, like, you know, right away, like, hey, you know, this is how we do things, you know what I mean? And most of the time it's like they get it and they kind of are happy like to be in a situation like that as well. You know what I mean? So I think that those would be like the main qualities that I would, if I had to characterize about myself, that I would, you know, like the transparency, the dedication, the commitment, the consistency, you know, because I'm there every day. You know, I may not be there for every class, but I'm there every day and I'm always available for my students. You know what I mean? Like it could be during class time, before class time, or after class time, you know. And my goals, not my goals, but my students' goals become my goals personally. You know what I mean? So like if my student wants to achieve something, it becomes a personal goal of my own to help that person achieve that goal. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Sure. So what's it been like? Because obviously, you know, you're a competitor and you're deep into that stuff and everything, but now you're also in a coaching role now where you have your gym and you're teaching people and stuff like that. What's that whole, because it's different, and I know this from experience, it's a different situation. There's different things that kind of excite you about it, you know, than when you're competing on your own. What's been some of the the changes that have happened since you began coaching? Any experiences that stand out, or any sort of things that, where, I guess, something that you've enjoyed while you've started this move into this role as a coach?
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like having 3 full-time jobs in a sense, because like, being a competitor is a full-time job and a half. And being an instructor is also a full-time job, like, and owning your gym is a full-time job, so like it was very, very difficult in the beginning to kind of figure out how to manage all of those things at once. And when I started only with a kids program, and I had like a handful of kids, and it was easy then because like I would go out and do really well at purple belt. I think I was a purple belt. I was purple belt. I would go out and do really well. My kids would be really excited, and then they'd like come in and train really, really hard because they'd like watch all the matches and be like, "Oh my God, you won! You did the technique we went over in class." And then like it would make them like really want to go ham, and then they would go ham, and I would see them going ham, and I'd be like, "Yo, if these little kids are going ham, I gotta go ham when I go to pro train." You know what I mean? And so it was like a very, very innocent, mutually beneficial experience. It was actually scary too, because like I take teaching kids really serious, and I take who I put around my kids' team very serious in terms of like instructors or influencers, just period. Like you never know who might influence a child, because children are so impressionable. So like it was really scary in the beginning actually, because I'm like, I don't want to like pass on my negative qualities as a person. you know what I mean? So like you try to like, it was a little bit of like, it was a little intimidating, trying to just be like a good example for these kids, because, I don't really want them to kind of like I didn't really want them to look up to me in the beginning or period, even down to this day. Like, it's not like I go around expecting like my students to look up to me, but like
they're gonna,
it just happens. And like, you're just like, let me make sure that I'm doing everything I can to like, just give a good example, so that they have a good reference, at the end of the day. And so in the beginning it was really easy. And at purple belt, it was pretty easy. I was like, I had to work to like kind of like get to the top of purple belt, or like one of the better purple belts where I could like start winning tournaments and stuff like that, like big tournaments. But like the teaching the kids helped me get there, right? So like in the beginning, it was like the teaching kind of made me a better competitor in ways, because I was having to break down a lot of jiu-jitsu to kind of like teach these kids. As the program started to grow and I started to move from like purple and brown belt, right, it got a little challenging, because like the change in level and then not having freedom to invest more time into my training made it a little bit difficult to keep up with the goals in a sense, right? So like I did well at brown belt, but I experienced phases where it became really strenuous in a sense. And so as the program continued to grow, and now the program's like pretty decent now, at black belt too, when I first got to black belt, it was like, holy crap, like how am I gonna like keep up with all this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, how am I gonna make sure that I'm doing this, doing X, Y, and Z? And then going back to like Murilo, for example, I had to, in the beginning of black belt, I had to kind of like take a step back and kind of look at like my professor again, and kind of like just like see like, how is this guy doing it? You know what I mean? And then talk to other guys who were kind of like good black belts at the time about how they manage their time as well. And then I kind of learned that like you kind of have to figure out, like I kind of started making teaching part of my training in a sense. And so like I got to a point where like teaching became like a training session in a way. And I made it kind of like, so like most gyms you'll see like the instructor kind of like just teaches class, and then they're not a part of the class. And I started getting to a point where like I made myself a part of the class even though I was teaching class. And so like I would teach my technique, and then like I would do like different situational sparrings with all like the students, so like they could kind of feel like what it would feel like to like kind of like feel, like the techniques from the instructor. But at the same time, really I was just working on my technique at the same time as well. You know what I mean? And then I started like managing, I just got better at managing like just like the responsibilities and time, too. So like I realized too that like if you're not constantly on top of everything you're supposed to do as a competitor and an instructor, like it's easy to let one take over the other.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where like the teaching just takes so much out of you. Maintaining the gym just takes so much time and like attention that it takes away from your ability to be a committed competitor. And so there's like this constant like power shift between like the two, where like you have to figure out how to like stay on top of them at all times. It's kind of hard to articulate verbally, but I kind of know what I mean, like mentally, in a sense, where like I started creating routines for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like just writing down like my schedule, and like no matter what, I'm just not gonna miss the schedule. You know what I mean? Because when you don't have a gym, if you miss a lifting session, you just do it later, or like, you know, first thing the next day. When you own a gym and you're a competitor and you're trying to become a black belt world champion, if you take off a training session, you don't get that back. You can't find the time to get that back, because once that time window is closed, you have to lift an hour and a half after that pro training. You have to teach an hour after that lifting session. You will be teaching for the next 5 hours, and then you can do something after that. But when that time comes, if you've wasted the lifting session, now you either have to choose to like spend that time lifting, or you could get in more drilling to help your jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So like, I just really learned like accountability is probably the biggest thing that I've gotten from doing all of this at the same time, is like just being accountable and like kind of like honest about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because like, I would tell myself all the time, like, if you just want to like, you know, try to build your gym and make a living for yourself, like with the gym, then stop competing. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to like complain about having to, and like, I never complain verbally to people, but like sometimes in your mind, like you complain to yourself, you're like, you know, like, man, like I got another training session. I got one last training session. Like, dang, like maybe I can just take this training session off. You know what I mean? Like, you start like, you know, feeding, like that little like dark voice starts like feeding you like negatives. And then sometimes I'll be telling myself, I'll be like, yo, like, stop being a punk, for lack of a better term without cursing. And then it's just like, yo, like, you decided to do this. You decided to do both. Do it. You know what I mean? Like, and then when I fail at doing that from time to time, rarely, but when I do, it's just kind of like, you messed up for the day. You just wasted the rest of your week, because now your training schedule and your teaching schedule will be out of balance because you lack the discipline to follow through your schedule. You know what I mean? So like, that accountability is real. And the need to be realistic and honest with yourself becomes even more real, because the only way you're going to become a better competitor is if you're like attacking those lapses in commitment and dedication to what you're trying to build. You know what I mean? And the same thing is true as a business owner too. Like, if you're supposed to like, you know, spend X amount of hours working on your curriculum, X amount of hours, making sure that, you know, like you're giving your time to your students. Like, if you're not giving those hours when your students aren't developing the way you'd like them to develop, you can't look at the student. You know what I mean? Like, what are you not doing? What did you not do? What were you supposed to do that you chose not to do because you wanted to do something else? You know, so like, that's the kind of the dynamic that I have every second of every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it's great. I mean, because it's one of those things where I relate to that, like having to juggle a lot of different hats, and it's definitely one of those things where, like you said, you have to. I have to be way more disciplined and way more regimented with my life than I used to be. I usually wake up on Sunday morning, and I'll plan out the rest of the week. You know, and basically, this is what I got to do this week, and kind of have it all lined out. So this way, each day I'm getting up and I'm like, this is what's on the docket for today. And it tends to make it a little bit more manageable, because otherwise, like you said, there's so many different things you can work on, and it's easy to let one thing sort of suck you in and then disregard the other thing that you need to do as well. One question I had for you was, how long did it take you to get your black belt?
Honestly, bro, I got to think about that. I got to like start piecing that back, because like at this point, like I feel like everything starts blending together.
Well, let's see. When did you get your black belt? What year?
August of 2018.
So about 7 years then, yeah.
I think like 6. Yeah, like 6 or 7.
Okay, cool. What was there anything difficult? Because, you know, I think that like so many people, and you know this as well as I do. It's like people like, I want to, how, like, you know, I see these advertisements sometimes. It's like, you know, speed your way to black belt, 3-5 years, whatever, you know. And I'm like, dude, you don't want that, because black belt is a big giant pool full of sharks out there. You don't want it. Just take your time and be focused on quality rather than quickness. But what was your journey like to black belt? Like, you know, because 6 years, 6.5 years is a pretty quick time to get your black belt. What are some of the things that you think allowed you to sort of ascend faster? And you were quality across the board. So when you were rising the ranks, it wasn't like, you know, you didn't win anything at blue belt or purple belt. You were winning tournaments and proving that you were a good quality belt along the way. What were some of the things that you think made that possible while you were training? It's like a bunch of stuff.
Like, yeah, we'd probably be here forever if I kept like talking.
Well, so I'm thinking about someone listening. So here's we'll boil it down to this. So let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, man, this guy seems pretty badass, whatever. And they've watched some of your matches and they're thinking, man, you know, what was something that was useful to you when you were, and again, you're still in your come up, you know, you're still working your way up, but when you were coming up in the lower ranks, like what were some things that were useful to you, or something that was useful to you to ascend and get better and improve?
Actually, I know exactly what I would say as the answer to your question now that I think about it. When I decided to do jiu-jitsu, I just did it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I didn't like entertain the idea of like having something else be there. I just did. You know what I mean? I think that was the most important thing. When I was like 19, from 18 to 20, I think I was, or 21, I was in school. I was still in college. But like even in college, actually college was like the hobby and jiu-jitsu was like the career. Yeah. The career. You know what I mean? Like I treated college like I was doing it recreationally. You know what I mean? I still got good grades, don't get me wrong. But like that's how I was treating it. Like I would schedule my classes around my training time, not like schedule my training around my classes. So like from the day that I was able to come back to training after that break I told you guys about, and my instructor, like my old instructor, just let me train, I didn't do anything else but train. You know what I mean? And that goes with like, you know, like hanging out with friends and stuff like that. Like I would hang out with people every now and again, but like the need to do it every weekend, the need to like, you know, go to every social gathering, to be in everything that's like supposed to be cool and stuff like that. I didn't like, that didn't appeal to me. The only thing I cared about was just like this goal, and the goal in the beginning, I don't think the goal was to become a black world champion. In the beginning, I was just trying to see like what I could like get from it. You know what I mean? I was just like, you know, I really like it. Like, can I be good one day? You know what I mean? Like, how good could I be? So like, I've always been the type of person that's like, if I do something, then I want to be the absolute best at it. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit and be mediocre. I'm going to like give like 1,000%, like literally whatever, like it says like in the like self-help books that you're supposed to do. Like I was going to give it a try and do it. You know, like when I used to play baseball, I remember my coach, he'd be like, Johnson, you suck. And then he was like, but I'm gonna make you good. And then like he would like come to practice early and like hit me fly balls. He'd stay after practice and we'd do BP after practice. Like I would be the first one there, I'd be the last one to leave. And like that mentality, like for me when I was a kid, at least, like coming up like 18, 19, and 20, I always wanted to be the guy, and still to this day, working more than everybody else. You know what I mean? Like I never want to, like when I lose tournaments, for example, like I get a little, everybody gets bummed out a little bit. You're like, dang, like, you know, well, that sucks. But I'm never like, I should have done this. I could have done that. You know what I mean? And that for me is like the most important thing out of anything that I do. I hate having to regret not working enough. You know what I mean? When I don't get my goals. You know, so like that was the biggest thing for me. And I try to explain this to people all the time. Like if you want to like do jiu-jitsu for recreational purposes and you want to be a doctor, go be a doctor and do jiu-jitsu when you can. If you want to like try to call yourself trying to be a competitor at jiu-jitsu, like there's no space for you to like kind of like, you know, like give it like a half a half-ass effort. You know what I mean? There are people who are literally giving their entire life to just one goal. You know what I mean? One goal, you know? So like, how do you think you're going to come into this and just kind of like bypass all those people when you're not giving that same commitment? And you see it in the matches where you see these guys that come in, they have great jiu-jitsu, they're really talented, but then they get annihilated by these guys that are just living it. You know what I mean? There's a difference. You know, it's a difference. Like, that's why those guys win. You know, and there are some rare occasions where like people can be like, you know, an engineer and do well at jiu-jitsu. But like at the end of the day, like once you start getting to the highest level, there's no space for you to do anything else. This has to be your profession. And I knew that when I was a white belt, because that's how it is for anything. So if I wanted to do it and I wanted to see how good I could be, then I had to give it that level of dedication. And I didn't always know like if I was doing the right thing in terms of like how I was training or how I was planning for the future. But I knew that there's one thing that you can't mistake: how committed and consistent you are. Like there's no gray area with that. It's just a right and a wrong answer. Are you consistent? Yes or no. Are you committed? Yes or no. You know what I mean? Like those are two things that there's never a gray area. You just know the answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like those are the two things those are the things that I've always like, when I struggle or when I feel like, you know, like you go through those little slumps, it's like revert back to that mentality. Like, are you doing X and are you doing Y? And if you are, it'll work itself out eventually. You know what I mean? If you aren't, you better figure out how to get those two things done.
Yeah, I think consistency, you know, is a common theme. I think if you want to get better at anything, you just have to do it. Reps and consistency and commitment go hand in hand as well. As far as Devhonte, as far as your goals now, like from when you started to your goals now, what goals do you have as a black belt now? Because you've done really well, like Chewy mentioned, through the belt ranks coming up, the colored belts. What's your goals now with jiu-jitsu, and what do you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so the goals really didn't change that much. Like I wouldn't say that they changed. I just added a few. You know what I mean? Like at first, when I first started jiu-jitsu, I just wanted to get my black belt and to be like a good black belt. You know what I mean? Because like you even when you're a white belt, you meet some black belts and you're just like, you guys know what I'm thinking, but I'm not gonna say it. But you know what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to be one of those guys.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's definitely people that are of like, they may have a higher rank around their waist, you know, but then when you see them teach a technique or when you roll with them or like all the measures of things that you would judge someone, right, by them, you're just kind of, it's almost like you got a sour taste in your mouth. You're like, maybe not quite. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was my first goal. I just don't want to be one of those guys, you know. And then once I started competing, then it became like, I want to be a black world champion. And that was just like it, you know, like I didn't care about no-gi for a long time, even though I just did it. And like, towards like brown belt, I was like, you know, like I started wanting to like kind of like do ADCC and stuff like that. And then I just said one day, I'm like, either you're going to do it or you're not. So like, I just decided, all right, I'm going to try and win ADCC too. You know what I mean? So like that became the goal, you know? So like, I would just say that I added more goals. And then as my gym continued to grow, I'm like, I started like wanting to have goals as a coach as well. So like the goals and that aspect kind of started to pile on too. So like, I just have like, as a competitor, I just want to win worlds and ADCC as many times as I can. Like you have other tournaments that you want to win, but those are the ones where like, if you lose everything all year and you win that, you're just like, all right, I don't care about
you take it.
Stuff. You know, yeah. You know what I mean? So like, and if you win, and even like, if you win all of those other tournaments, like I had years in the lower belts where I'd win, like one year I won Euros, Pans, Abu Dhabi World Pro, and you know, a bunch of like opens, and I lost worlds. Like I lost in the finals of worlds and I lost in the semifinals of the absolute. And I just like felt like I wasted the whole year. You know what I mean? Like that's, to me, that's how like important like the world title is, you know what I mean? Cause like, that's what you get up for, you know what I mean? Like those other tournaments, like you get up for them, but like, if you've ever done worlds or ADCC, I haven't done ADCC, but I would imagine it's the same thing. You get up for worlds, you know what I mean? Like it's a different type of like, and like kind of like hunger and excitement and energy that you fight with at worlds. And it's the same thing for everyone else that you fight, you know what I mean? Because like there's been times where like, and you know, in Worlds, like, you just kind of like, maybe a guy's going on a knee bar and you're like, if he breaks my knee, I'm just have to deal with it and still try to win this match. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just like the way like your mind like works for Worlds. Like, you're just kind of like, you know, you'll do anything for the world title because like that's what you wake up every day, kind of like counting down 365 days for multiple times in your life for, you know, kind of thing, if you're doing jiu-jitsu. And so for me, like, that's always been like the end all be all, because I also love the gi. You know, the gi's like, I started doing jiu-jitsu because of the gi, you know, and then I kind of like started doing no gi because when gi season is over and all the top guys stop competing in no gi, stop competing in the gi, I kind of still want to compete. So that's how I started doing no gi, you know, and then like no gi goals became a thing. So as a competitor, that's where like I stand. And as far as my goals as a coach, I just want to have a successful gym. And what that means for me is just having a group, a community of people where like the culture is right. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean I don't need to have 1,000 students or, you know, like, it doesn't matter if I have 200 students, you know what I mean? As long as like the culture is right, you know, like everybody's in there, they're working towards the same goals and they're being good people in the process. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing it the right way. That's what I care about as a coach. And I want to have future black belt world champions, juvenile world champions, adult level world champions, like through all the belt ranks, ADCC champions and stuff like that, you know. But the main goal, and all those goals kind of derive from the main goal, it's just having a gym where like I can walk into that gym and feel comfortable about the community that I'm like creating with these people.
Yeah, that's super important. That's a big thing. You know, like at our gym, we have just such a melting pot of people, but you know, everybody loves each other. Everybody trains so well, and you know, and that's probably that's what makes you want to come back and be consistent with training. When you see your buddies and you see your friends, and that, you know, you look forward to that after a long day of work. For some of us, you know, you look forward to sharing that time together, working hard together. So Devhonte, man, we appreciate your time. What do you have coming up? Do you have any competitions, anything you got coming up you want to let people know about?
I'm going to do ADCC trials in November. I got Pan Am's coming up next month. And Pan Am's ADCC is going to be big for like the gym as a whole, because Pan Am's, we have 10 people from the gym going. That's like the biggest group that we've sent so far, you know? So that's kind of like a little bit of a milestone for us.
Nice.
And ADCC trials, we're going to send like, you know, 4 or 5 people there. And that's like, that'll be the first time as a gym we're like trying to like, you know, branch into that circuit of competition as well. So those are the 2 biggest things that I have on my plan right now. I have a few super fights that I can't announce right now, but they're coming up too. Yeah. So
that's awesome, man. I appreciate your time. And your gym, where's your gym at, and how can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my gym's located in Clifton, New Jersey, 247 Crooks Ave. And you can reach out to us at our email, bonesjujitsu@gmail.com, or you can hit up the Instagram page at BonesBJJ Academy. And yeah, you can call us too. You can find that on the website, bonesjujitsu@gmail.com.
Awesome, man.
Awesome, bro. Thanks for being on with us.
Yep. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, dude.
All right. So that was the podcast. You know, before we get off here, I know that some of you guys actually listen to the end. You're going to get a bonus, because when we were on the podcast with Devhonte talking, there's an idea that's been swirling around in my head. And it was something where I was talking to a young guy just yesterday. So he's a young guy. He trains at the gym with us. His family, he grew up in the projects and stuff, and he trains with us now. And he was one of the guys where, when you were listening to it, where him and I were sharing like what I call poor stories. You know, where we're talking about just growing up poor and the silly ideas that happen. You know, like we were talking about that, how when you're poor, like things that would be useful skills later on, like being smart and reading books and learning how to play violin, all that stuff was laughed at. You know, it just wasn't considered cool at all.
It was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
You're a nerd.
Yeah, you're a nerd. You're this, you're that. And we were talking about that. But one of the things that him and I were talking about, because he even said this, he said he comes to the gym partly because He loves the training. It's fun. He wrestled in high school, and so it's kind of similar to wrestling, but he also likes the sort of mentor aspect, the mentorship that he gains from just being around older men that kind of have their stuff together on some level. You know, we're all figuring it out as best we can as time goes on, but he enjoys that. And so there was something that we were talking about where I told him, I was like, man, you don't get much control in your life. You have no control of where you're born. You have no control of who your parents are. You have no control of other people. I mean, so much. And even your own decisions. In some cases, you feel like you're out of control with them. I mean, have you ever eaten something where you were so pissed off at yourself for eating it, you thought you were on a diet, and then you couldn't help yourself and you ate the bear claw? Have you ever, done something where you just don't want to do it, but for some reason you can't help yourself? You know, like I remember when I was younger, and I know this is completely not on the normal jiu-jitsu topic related stuff, but I remember when I was younger, I had a problem with like just wanting to watch pornography. You know, you like want to watch it. Like, I don't want to watch it. Like, I have a girlfriend. I don't need to watch this. But it's there's these things in our life where we have
because it's wrong, or you maybe feel like you should or shouldn't. Well, not that it's wrong, but like maybe you feel like you shouldn't do it or you don't need to. I don't know.
I just didn't want to.
Right.
Because to me, it's like whenever I would, and here's the reason why.
There's nothing wrong with whatever.
Do whatever you want to do. For me, here was the reason why. When I got away from that, the way that I would look at my girlfriend, the way that our relationship would transpire was much different and much more pleasurable.
Right.
When you're looking at that stuff, it just takes on a different thing. It's just it's not reality. And so I know this is completely off topic, but here's what I'm getting to this. But for the most part, the only thing you do have control over are the small little decisions throughout your life, little daily decisions, small things, the little decisions, right? And it's also when you do this, your ability to make good decisions is like a muscle. So as you get better at implementing good, positive rituals and making conscious decisions, you get better at exercising, just like a muscle. You get better at contracting and making those things happen. And so it's these little decisions. This is everything. It's like when you listen to Devhonte's story, right? He was just being consistent with these decisions, small things, right? He took a drive, went there. He came in and trained. He did these things. And this is something where, he came from a poor neighborhood. He was coming from a single parent. But instead of going, boo-hoo, right? Woe is me, things suck sometimes, or it's tough, or it's unfair, or whatever. He said, well, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm going to be consistent. And people see that. Right? People see that action. They see people taking action. And people, I don't care who you are, people respect that. People respect people that take action and show up. Because so few people do that. So few people just show up and do the damn thing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why you stand out. When you choose to be someone that just says, I'm going to show up and do the damn thing, you stand out amongst people. Right? But getting back to it, I've been thinking about this idea a ton because, like some of the younger guys will look at me and they'll say, Chewy, like, how did you do X or Y? And I look back at it, I'm like, well, it started off with, like, say, for instance, some of the rituals I institute, right? I wake up early enough so that I have the first hour of the day to myself. It's me. My first hour is myself. I read books. I meditate. I do whatever I want to do. I eat breakfast, and I just take my time to kind of get going, right? If for some reason, if I wake up early and I need to get a lift in or something because I got a busy day, I'll go lift. Whatever it is I want to do, that hour is mine. And then I give myself away for the rest of the day or whatever. And then the last hour of the evening is mine again.
Yeah.
And I institute usually an hour of study for my vocations every day. It could be an hour towards jiu-jitsu study, watching matches, instructionals. It could be an hour of planning out classes. It could be an hour of doing like looking up business stuff and researching business. It could be an hour of researching copywriting because I do a lot of writing and persuasive writing. It could be all these different things, but there's all these little things that I put into sort of consistent rituals. And those are the little things because they're like drops in a bucket. Because like if you leave a bucket under the faucet overnight, let's say you got a leaky faucet, you put that bucket under there to catch the water. A couple droplets go in there. It doesn't look like much, right? You can't drink it. It's not gonna do much of anything. It's seemingly insignificant. But you come back in the morning and that damn bucket will be full, overflowing, right? And that's kind of the way that these things work. People want to have the big goals. They want to be the guy with the gym. They want to be a guy winning big tournaments like Devhonte. Well, if you want to do that, you have to put those small drops in the bucket. You got to do the little things that are going to make a big difference long term, right? People even see me sometimes. I've seen people say, Chewy, you're such an inspiration or whatever, and I want to do some of the same things you've done. Well, you got to put those drops in that bucket. And it takes daily consistent rituals. It has to be daily consistent practice, daily consistent effort. And again, it seems insignificant at first, but that's just the way it is, because nothing that's worthwhile is going to happen. Like, I just finished reading Kevin Hart's memoir that he had, and he was talking about, he called himself, he's like, and instantly I was an overnight success after 16 years of work, right? There ain't no such thing as that overnight success. It's an illusion. It's a lie. Right? Everybody, like, whatever you see on the tip, it's like the iceberg. Whatever you see on the tip, there's so much more going on underneath. And so, sometimes if you listen to these podcasts and maybe you're inspired by some of these guys, don't pay attention so much to what they've accomplished necessarily. Pay attention to what they've done to accomplish that. I think that's a big thing. Like, for me, one of the things where, like, anytime I've had mentors, I always watch them like a hawk, like, and observe them, like almost like National Geographic. What do they do? How do they live? What kind of existence did they go through? And that always gave me something to go by. And even if you listen to Devhonte, he's doing the same thing. He said he's watching these guys, and it's almost like he'd go to the gym and nobody's paying attention to him, but he's watching them and he's mimicking what they do. He's mimicking other people, and that's what we do as humans. And so you can do that sort of unknowingly, just how you'll, if you go around people that have an accent, you'll pick that accent up. Yeah. Or you can do it consciously. You can say, well, what kind of things do they do? What time did they wake up? What kind of rituals do they put in their life? What kind of, and institute those, because it's those daily rituals, those drops in the bucket that change everything. And so that idea has been swirling in my head, and after listening to Devhonte, that's another thing. Again, you see it there again. It's popping up. Yeah. You have a very small amount of control over anything in this world, and that's all you should be focusing on. Is like, you can't change anything if you can't change yourself. You change. It's like I think it was Joseph Campbell. He may have been quoting someone like Nietzsche or something like that, but you change yourself and you change the world around you. That's the way that it works, right? So often people they looked at other people and they want to change them. I need to change you. I need to change that person because you've slighted me, or this person's doing this, or this, that, whatever. Instead of doing that thing, like, well, how could you change yourself? And then in line of that, you change everything around you. Yeah. Like, just like Devhonte, he changed himself and built himself up. And now he's a coach to all these students around him. Now he's making an impact. He's creating a ripple around them. For sure. Right? Yeah. Just like people did with him. And so that's the beauty of it. So to me, that's just the way to live. You build yourself up, you change yourself. That allows you to make the impact around you, whether you want to or not. You will do it just by being in virtue of what you're doing. But if you want to change something in your life, daily rituals, drops in the bucket. That's what it's about. So just an idea, just a ramble that I wanted to share with you guys before we hopped off here.
It's great. Yeah, just consistency. Like that's the key to everything. Doing things when you want to do them, when you don't want to do them, just being consistent.
You show up.
Exactly. Show up. And like he had said on the podcast, he was like, man, I've got students that come in and they're just like, they don't feel well, or they're just not on top of their game. But man, they show up and they work hard. They do the best they can, get the most out of what they're able to. And that's pretty important. Like you always say it all the time, like, a day of jiu-jitsu is better than, on a crappy day, when you're the nail, it's still better than not being on the mats. Mm-hmm. And that's evident to all of us that have trained for many years. Like, when we're injured, if I'm injured, I'm like, man, I wish I could be on the mat so bad, even to get my ass kicked. Because you appreciate it. You appreciate being able to train in some capacity. Mm-hmm. Some people can't ever do it, and that feeling also of training jiu-jitsu and being exhausted, you get that even if you're, a good day, bad day, you still get that. And you still get that camaraderie. You still get that, I feel like when I train in the mornings, like 6 a.m., we do that 6 a.m. class. It's hard as shit to get up and get there, and you're still waking up while you're trying to get some training in. And it's not the best. Like, you don't feel like you're quite, up and ready to do the thing, but you feel like you've conquered something, you've accomplished something for the day. So the rest of your day just feels like you're walking just a little bit taller. Sure. You feel like you did something.
Well, you conquered yourself. You conquered your own inner weakness. Your desire to hit the snooze button. You got up and did the damn thing.
Yep. And part of that is, having people that you're responsible for in a way. Like, people expect you there. Like Jeff and I, Jeff's one of the other brown belts, and he teaches on Tuesdays and I teach on Fridays, and we try to be there to support each other. I want to make sure I'm there for his class to, help him in any way, and he's there for me. And so I think it makes you more accountable to the other person, but also to the students, because we've got a good amount of white belts that have been showing up, and and they want to learn, and they expect. I expect to give them my best.
Yeah. All right, guys. And with that said, that's going to be it for the podcast today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And again, if you want to support the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. If you want to get yourself some CBD, check out charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu, 15% off. EpicRollBJJ.com. Some cool jiu-jitsu shirts, rash guards, gis, the whole thing, jiu-jitsu gear. Promo code is Chewjitsu, 15% off on the order. And if you guys would like to, what is the word? Be in tune with whatever I've got going on, be in sync with whatever I've got going on, or check out some of the different rambles and different stuff that I talk about. A lot of times it's stuff that makes it on the show eventually, but if you want to get it first, check out my email. They call it a newsletter, but it's not really I'm not telling you news.
Chewy's thoughts of the day.
The Chews letter.
The Chews letter.
Instead of the newsletter, the Chews letter.
You go.
The daily Chews letter that comes out typically Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday.
The Daily Chew.
The Daily Chew. Something to chew on. That's how I end a lot of them with, like, just chew on that. Something to chew on for your day. If you want to check that out, go to jiu-jitsu.net. There will be a couple offers for free ebooks and things like that you can get, which one of them is a game plan. The other one is a sort of an ideal on strategies for drilling jiu-jitsu. So you can check that out and get the free ebook. Get the letters. If you don't like them, you can always unsubscribe and keep the books for yourself. If not, enjoy the letters. And so that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.